Caring for Posca paint markers is quite easy, and that's because most of these marker pens can be stored at any angle, so they can be popped into your bag. It doesn't matter if they're upside down, if they get jiggled about, they'll be absolutely fine providing the cap is on the end. The only one you need to take a bit of extra care with is the PCF 350, and even if that does get into the wrong position in your bag for a short while, it's not a major problem, it will still be fine, but I wouldn't store it long term at any other angle apart from horizontally. Now, when you haven't used the pen for a while, the little tip may have got a bit dry, and so therefore you should always follow the instructions on the pen to activate the pen again and to depress, shake the pen. The ball inside will mix the paint, and then you press the nib, take the cap off, press the nib onto a piece of paper and get the ink, the paint flowing again. Now I have a separate video on activating and charging the pens. So most of the tips can be cleaned under the tap with cold water, except for the PC1MR, the pin tip there, and I found that that doesn't really work, so I wouldn't wash those underwater. And also the brush pens, they are not listed as being able to be washed under the tap, so I've avoided washing those and my glitter and metallic pens. I've had problems with other glitter and metallic pens that you can't wash them, so I've avoided washing these. So the PC3M and the PC5M, which that's the 3M, they actually have reversible and replaceable tips, and some of the other pens also have replaceable tips. I'm guessing that the 3M and the 5M are probably the most commonly bought. The other thing that's always important is when you've finished using the pen to snap the cap back on so you hear it click, and then you know that the pen is secure from leaking. If you have any spills on the outside of the casing, now this often happens, I find, with the brush pens around here. If you get the ink when it's wet or not too dry, you can just wipe it off with your kitchen paper, the damp kitchen paper. If it's very wet, then use your dry kitchen paper, and if like this it's dried a little bit, I would just use my damp paper and then just wipe the pen with the dry paper just to make sure it's nice and dry before you put the cap back on. And that just keeps your pens looking nice, feeling nice, and stops them getting all like clogged up under the cap there. So if the marker pen does flood when you're using it, if you've activated it or charged it up too much, just always have your piece of kitchen paper handy, your dry kitchen paper. I always work with a piece of damp kitchen paper on my little palette there. And I think the other thing to maintain the long life of your pens, apart from always having the cap in place, is careful where you store them. You don't want them in direct heat or sunlight, so put them in somewhere in a cool, dry place where they're going to be stored. I personally store all my pens horizontally, even these ones that say they don't have to be stored horizontally. I just find it easier. You can keep them in actually a case under the elastic bands or in little trays, and you know, store them somewhere where they're easy accessible, easy for you to pick up, but just make sure that they're not getting overheated and they're not getting too cold. Just a nice even temperature, and they'll last you a really long time.